The secret to improving is having a good attitude and having fun. This is the story of two Lindsays, a Kelly, a Heather, and a Chemi. All of them came to Nicaragua on their first retreat, an amazing time, and came back to El Salvador. Kelly's first trip to Nicaragua was kind of a shocker. Day one, straight off the airport transfer, like right into the water. She gets her very first wave.
Caught my foot on the board and wrapped my leg underneath. I went down, wrapped the leash around my ankle, twisted it, and I completely, ridiculously pulled my left calf muscle.
Couldn't even surf the rest of the trip, but she was super inspirational. She spent the whole time with a great attitude. She was like doggy style, like riding the board on her hands and knees with her one leg in the air. She came back to our first retreat in El Salvador in April, and it was awesome to get to surf with her. She was kind of sitting off to the side, you know, getting like little cute waves and sort of struggling with her pop-up. And on the very last day, finally everything clicked. She got her pop-up down, and I think that she really finally built up her confidence. Kelly came back in October, and after 6 months of surfing and practicing, she had really improved. Kelly was always getting the wave of the day. It was crazy. We'd look back over the footage, and the biggest wave that came in, that's the wave Kelly was on. And now that she had her pop-up figured out, she had really good control of the board, kind of moving the board up and down, pumping on the longboard. She's riding a 9.4, which is solid, but she still had really good control of it.
So when I'm on the wave, I guess I thought I was cutting back and turning, and then I watched the video and I'm kind of going on the wave just like beep, 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 just up and down, not really turning. And then Holly said, hey, take a look at where you are on the wave, what it's doing, and make that turn back in. So I started realizing to look kind of back over my shoulder.
I was telling her, you know, you gotta open up your shoulder and look back towards the whitewash to see, you know, point yourself in that direction. And by the end of the week, that's what she was doing. She was doing cutbacks, showing awesome board control. Chemi's from Chicago and doesn't get to surf very often. She came on her first retreat in January of 2011 and learned how to surf. I think maybe she'd surfed once or twice before, but she was still like very much beginner. She spent the whole time in the whitewash. By the end of the week, she could kind of like carve a little bit in the whitewash, but still she didn't catch any green waves. In between that retreat and coming back to El Salvador, she went on another trip to Costa Rica and got some more practice in. But I couldn't believe that after only 10 weeks of surfing, she was riding green waves, full-on green waves, and by the end of the week, she was taking off on some bombs. She was going down the line. We were working with her on how to like turn her head so that she would actually go down the line instead of just going straight. And she's just so fun to surf with, great attitude. It was so awesome to watch her improve.
I improved a lot this week with the help of all the girls. It was really inspiring seeing all the girls that are better, more experienced. It just felt good and smooth. It almost felt like too easy to be true, you know, like too good to be true. It just kind of happened, I guess.
Lindsay, number one, is a doctor from Canada, and she came on the same retreat as Chemi actually in January. She was riding a big fat fish and, you know, just kind of trying to figure out how to pop up and how to go down the line, and she got some whitewash waves, and by the end of the first retreat she was, you know, getting some green waves, but she definitely didn't have control of her surfboard. She came back again to El Salvador. She had a new board, a Rusty Dwart, which is like a shorter, kind of wider board. And I was blown away on day one, like the first wave she took off on, she was just like carving down the line. I was like looking over my shoulder like to see how she'd go, and I just see her like flying down the line. And every day she got better and better. And by the end of the week, she was also working on her cutbacks and able to kind of go back into the whitewash, which was really cool to watch. And I can't wait to surf with her again. The second Lindsay is from New York, and she came on a retreat in March of 2012. She was always having trouble with kind of getting stuck at the top of the wave.
I don't know, because I felt like I wasn't really, I was like taking off on the waves, but not really dropping in, and then they were coming underneath me. I was going over the back.
Like she just wouldn't quite paddle hard enough, and she'd try and pop up too early and she'd get stuck, and the wave would go on without her, or she'd end up taking like a really late drop because she didn't really get into it.
Now I'm obsessed with like, what did that look like? I need to see what I did wrong or right.
But when she came back to El Salvador, she really took it to the next level. We were working on board control with her as well. And by the last day, she was cutting back and carving and had figured out how to adjust the weight between her feet so that she could keep her speed going. Yeah, it was awesome. Heather's from Bermuda, and the waves are not often awesome in Bermuda, which means that Heather is always stoked. And no matter what the waves are like, she had the most fired up attitude. She was psyched. She was sitting deep, like almost going into the rocks. She likes to ride a little tiny surfboard. I think her board's like 5'6" maybe. I keep telling her she needs to ride a slightly bigger board, but she's into the little board, so, you know, what can you do? Heather came on her first retreat in July. She was so excited about Nicaragua and was just like paddling around crazy. She actually got a lot of really good waves, and like every session she was like, that was the best wave of my life. She came back to El Salvador and once again every day got the best wave of her life, and was really working on board control, keeping up her speed down the line. Because she's riding such a small board, you really have to be on it with your pumping, otherwise you lose your speed. So I was working with her on not being like super frantic. She has a lot of experience wake surfing, so she's used to like a little wave that's always the same. And in surfing, the wave's bigger and it's always changing. So what you do on a wake surf is not going to be the same thing you're going to be doing out on the ocean. So we were working with her on kind of learning how to adjust, which was number one, looking at the wave, and number two, smoothing out her transitions between turns. And by the end, she was surfing beautifully. The thing that all of these girls had in common, and one of the reasons why they were able to improve so much, is that they had good attitudes. When I gave them a little bit of advice on kind of how to take it to the next level, all of them listened and took it in. A lot of times with girls, I'll give some constructive criticism and I get like a bunch of arguments back on like, oh, I didn't do that because of this, or I couldn't do that because of that. And all of these girls would just be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do that on the next one. And then they would go out and implement it. And sometimes it would take a few waves, you know, or maybe it would take that night thinking about it and the next day they could put it into practice. If you're out in the water with a smile on your face, you're gonna be having a good time and you're gonna surf longer. And the more time you spend in the water and the more waves you catch, the more opportunities you have to improve. So it really starts with attitude and, you know, followed up with time.